This program was produced by and first broadcast on Community Radio Hamilton, a volunteer-based community access station. For more information, go to www.communityradio.co.nz.
You're locked in to the You Be the Judge radio show with your host, Rainbow Whitty, exploring alternative news and exotic topics.
This is Bruce, and I'm going to try and provide you with what I call the November newsletter, although this is the last week in October, and things are so exciting that whatever I say today may be profoundly different by tomorrow, because we are in the evolution, and it's happening right now all around us. In a former communication, I may have talked to you about something called the biological imperative. These are drives that biologists recognize that living organisms have, and these are motivations for doing things. The basic drives for food, water, sex, etc. are part of the biological imperatives. Very interestingly, the biological system has acquired an early warning mechanism that says if we are in threat of any kind, or our biological imperative is in some way being thwarted, that the system will begin to respond and start to take action to protect itself. Well, it's interesting because the biological imperative is waking up people all over the world, because we're beginning to recognize that the way we are living is totally unsustainable at this particular moment. And the significance about that is our biological imperative is really waking us up. It's a gut feeling that says something is wrong, something is actually a threat, and we don't know exactly what it is. And why I bring this up right now is because we are engaged in a process called Occupy Wall Street. And it's spreading all around the world. All countries all over the world are beginning to support the protest against the corporate control of the world in which we live. And why is this relevant? Because we're beginning to recognize that the way we are living, the lifestyle we've been programmed to provide for ourselves and for the world around us, is not sustainable. That we are facing our own extinction. That threat of extinction is what is alerting our biological imperative to the fact that we've got to do something right now. Well, here's the problem. People are recognizing that we're not sustainable, that the world is facing an extinction event of mass proportion. And yet we say, well, what can we do about it? And the answer is we don't have the answer. And exactly this is what we're recognizing from our government at the point of their inability to make any appropriate responses to stab off the threats that loom before us right now. And so people are gathering, and people are saying, look, we know it's not working. And they're out in the streets, and they're trying to say, let's draw attention to the reality that we are facing a severe threat to our life and the world in which we live. And so while we see all these people gathering, we also recognize that they don't really have a specific gathering point, something that they're all working on, trying to get to the same place. They're just getting together saying, it's not working. We don't have answers. And the answers obviously are not forthcoming from the government. The issues, unfortunately, are all related to the corporate control of the world in which we live. Corporate greed has actually, unfortunately, undermined civilization. People talk about, well, corporations are the equivalent of people, and that's how they got their foot in the door and began to control the government of the United States. The corporations are not supportive of the people. Corporations, by definition, are supportive of the shareholders. So whatever they do is not for the benefit of the world, it's for the benefit of the people that invest in these corporations. The significance is this. Corporations have no morality or duty to the people of this world. And in that light, this is exactly why we're facing all the severe problems in our world, which include economic problems, global climate change problems, fuel crisis problems, etc., etc., etc. So while I'm here, and what I'm talking about is this. People are gathering. Their biological imperative is driving them to say, look, we've got to do something. The answers are not clear. That's pretty obvious. We don't have any answers because the current systems and the current institutions are the cause of the problem. And as Albert Einstein remarked, he said you cannot solve the problems with the same thinking that created the problems. So consequently, it says the institutions that we have to support us are actually the cause of the problem, and therefore we really can't expect to get any answers from that source. So the people in the streets, we don't know what we're talking about in regard to what do we need to do. But we're getting together to raise the question that says we must do something, and we must start to look for whatever that is now. So the relevance of the Occupy Wall Street is that it's people facing life-threatening situation, coming together, and yet asking for what can we do? What can we do?
Welcome to Community Radio, 1206 AM, 106.7 FM, also streaming across the internet at Community Radio. You are on the air everywhere on the You Be the Judge radio show, which confronts the real issues which are facing society, the world and mankind. We investigate alternative topics and exotic knowledge and expose the real underlying issues that affect us all in some shape or form that the mainstream media black out, deny and manipulate. We also look at possible solutions to take us past our current matrix of slavery. So with that in mind, you can imagine we are very, very busy here on the You Be the Judge radio show. And we are supporting the voice of the people. Now, before we get into this week's show, you can check out some of our previous shows by heading to Facebook and searching for You Be the Judge radio show. Also, search for Rainbow Project Media channel on YouTube to check out some of our YouTube uploads. You can also email us at youbethejudgenz@hotmail.com, youbethejudgenz@hotmail.com if you want to come on air for an interview or voice your issue or concerns. And for all your listeners out there, we are coming to you live via Team Chat online, so there could be some online interference. So this week we have a very special guest, a banker who has woken up from being caught in the matrix, a truther now and researcher. Kia ora, Oneness.
Kia ora, Woody. Good to be on here. Thanks for inviting me.
You were on air with us a couple of months ago there, and we had a very interesting interview back then.
Well, no, things have been going well, thanks. It's, again, times are busy. The Matrix sucks up a fair bit of my time, so it's more a case of just trying to be consciously create that balance and make sure I don't get too caught in the illusion, and just stay awake and aware, and also find the time to contribute to kind of society, which is, you know, what feels fulfilling and successful to me. So I enjoy as much the joy of discovery and learning and understanding new things, and you know, just keeping my mind open. Really, I like the quote the other day I read. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when open.
Yes, I've heard that one before, and so true indeed. But this week we want to talk a little bit about the economic situation. Now, you're currently a banker in the Matrix, the ones most people love to hate. Now, some would claim you are 1%. So are you 1%, 99%, or the 100%?
We, you, really. The bankers, I guess, are the 99%, to be honest. They do their best and feel that they're contributing. They've been brought up and conditioned in certain social structures that have given them, you know, opportunities, and I guess some of the families have been wealthy. They've been able to educate them in the current system, which, you know, kind of favours finance, lawyers, bankers, doctors, whatever's kind of the mainstream cult at the time. So these people, I guess, and I was one of them for a period, you go through life thinking that, you know, you also want to achieve, or you feel that, you know, banks are the lubricants to society. You know, you create trade and you finance businesses that, you know, help society and allow, you know, primary resources to be produced and manufactured and distributed, and that's what banking is part of it, you know, about. But behind the scenes is also the money system, which drives certain behaviours, the profit motive over human well-being, and this is something that is, you know, makes some people do the wrong things. But at the end of the day, I think, yeah, bankers have good intentions. They perhaps have the wrong understandings, perhaps have been misled, the wrong principle, or, you know, effectively they go through life never really having asked the hard questions, really. And once you do that, and you start losing your respect, or, you know, understand that some authority has been corrupted, and then you ask why and how, and you ask, you know, dig a bit deeper, you start to connect the dots, really, and that's when you start, you know, really looking for information that is going to be helpful to society, rather than just following along and being comfortable in life.
I know you don't want to divulge too much about where you've been working in terms of your banking history and that, but can you give us some insight into this fractional reserve lending?
Yeah, it's fractional reserve banking. Is just it comes back from the money lenders and the goldsmiths, where they basically people deposited their gold, and when the gold vaults were full, and they issued IOUs effectively, which became the first paper form of money. That was fractional reserve banking in the start, so they were able to re-lend money. So you make a deposit of $10,000, and depending on the regulators at the time, depends on how much equity or capital you need to keep in reserve. So you might need to keep 10%. Therefore, of the 10,000, you need to keep $1,000 in reserve, and the other 9,000 can be lent back out, and then you charge interest on it. So the principal is always accruing interest. That's the income that the bank keeps. And they run their overheads and things from that, and basically that's in essence how the money system is working. It's an infinite growth paradigm on a finite planet with the money system, I guess, creating, constantly needing to grow, and shareholders expect returns. Interest rates need to keep going up or down depending on the cycle that is perceived, I guess, or wanted to be created. Yeah, and effectively that's how money is distributed.
Okay, now the government is borrowing $450 million a week, well up from the $250 million a week previously revealed, and this was told by BNZ Capital economist Craig Ebbett. Now, $450 million a week is quite a lot of money. How can the New Zealand government pay that back?
Yeah, well, I guess you got to understand what money is first. Really, it's just a bit of paper with ink on it, or a digit on a screen, and it's a social contract that somebody hands you $1 and you give them a service for it, and that's the means of exchange. So, I mean, in terms of a lot of money, hey, it's lots of bits of paper with ink on it, or lots of numbers on a screen, but it's nothing more than that unless you actually believe in it. So, because our human value system believes in it, and the monetary system is a value system, and it has now become a value, and it's become disjointed with the money system. But to answer your question, yeah, there's an issue with our current debt borrowing, and if you want to carry on in the monetary system, then if you keep on borrowing and you need to keep paying interest, then where do you get the interest from? And it's from either taxing your citizens, and that means the taxes need to come from somewhere. People need to work harder, and that taxes the ability to have productive investment. So as the structure of the banks borrows offshore, then has to pay the interest to the offshore owners, and I don't know if you want to go into it, but I understand there's a conditionality agreement signed back in the 70s called the Seven Sisters Agreement, which the collateral that New Zealand had to give the IMF or the World Bank in order to borrow offshore was the oil in the South End. And this then meant that we could borrow money offshore rather than printing our own money inside our own treasury. It's part of the centralised banking system, and from there the banks dish out the money to the government. The government then taxes its citizens, and in order to get the interest paid. And the Reserve Bank dictates the interest rate while it's borrowing or lending money to the government. And this is what how they manipulate the monetary cycle.
Exactly. So this was a question that got asked to me today by a friend, and he basically says to me, well, why don't we create our own currency? And I said to him, there's certain conditionalities that had taken place back in the 60s, 70s, which actually stopped the printing of our own money. Should we be printing our own money, creating our own currency here in New Zealand? And if we do create our own currency, do you think possibly that we could be taken over by these bankster cronies and pit bulls like NATO, who have gone into places like Libya, because Libya were about to create their own currencies, Syria's got their own currency, and now Syria is also about to be taken over by NATO. So once again, they're going to be pillaged, murdered, and their land stolen, and resources, just like Afghanistan, Iraq and Libya. So that was one of the questions I got asked today, is should we create our own currency?
Yeah, good question. I mean, money is, the monetary system, I guess, is a modern form of imperialism where you confiscate resources and take over, and I guess by bombing up countries and destroying their infrastructure, that then requires the oppressed or the victims of this war to have to borrow money to rebuild the resources, and that's how the IMF and the World Banks operate. Economic Hitman explains that. Yeah, whether we print our own money, there exists around the world something called the Universal Commercial Code, which was established by the Romans to allow them to borrow money and trade in other countries, because, I mean, if you bought something from Africa and traded, then who's to say, how can you enforce that they'll lend the money or pay it back? So there's established a universal commercial code which dictates how people lend and borrow and transfer these debts.